Hey, true believers. Chris Mack coming at you with The Death of Doctor Strange, number 4. And for the main book, from what I've read, we got one more issue left. Yes, there are a bunch of tie-in books, but as I said at the beginning of this review, I'm not going to touch those because a lot of the times the tie-in books for me really burns me out and gives me event fatigue. This, on the other hand, there are times when it can feel rushed, but overall it has been a consistently good story, just focusing on these 5 issues. So we got one more left. Let's dive in, and you guys can kind of understand what the hell I'm talking about here. So first off, if you want to read what's happened so far, if you have not seen our other reviews, feel free to pause and read this at your convenience. The book is Jed MacKay writer, Lee Garbett artist, Antonio Fabela colorist, VC's Corey Petit lettering. Here's everyone else working on the book. And Doctor Strange was created by Stan Lee and Steve Ditko. Now, last issue. What's his name? His name's Carl Mordew, I think his name is. Something like that. Anyway, Doctor Strange has found out the reincarnation, or kind of this phantom reincarnation, has discovered that this individual is in possession of the Coke of Levitation. The Coke of Levitation. That sounds like something you'd do in the 70s. The Cloak of Levitation and the Eye of Amagatu. And so Doctor Strange wants to come and destroy them because they are longtime enemies. Now, I will say, I wish right here that there was sort of a slugfest, like a slugfest, or, a magic fight. That would have been very interesting, because that's kind of how it built up in the last issue, where we see Doctor Strange, Clea, I believe her name is, and Wong going to attack him, and then on that same token, we see the War Sisters taking Dogoth and feeding him to the Peregrine child, and it was just a very harrowing juxtaposition of what's going on. So at this point, it felt a little bit like a letdown, but this guy, he's supposed to be one of Doctor Strange's most feared enemies, just kind of in his own land. Like, he kind of reminds me of a sorcerer. He reminds me of, what's his name? Victor Von Doom. Except this guy's magical. He's very prideful, very boastful, and I like how Strange, says that, of all the atrocities that you've committed, I haven't killed you yet. But please don't worry, Carl. That is a mistake I intend to correct. And so he's cowering behind this door, and I like how his face is just like, oh God. And then he swallows his pride and he goes, no. And then he comes out just full, kind of that regal stance. I'm Baron Carl Amadeus Mordew, Lord of Castle Mordew. I have done much evil in my life. I have murdered, stolen, consorted with demons, and I feel remorse for none of it. My only regret in life, my single lament, is that I am innocent of the murder you accuse me of, and I will not be spoken to in such a manner in my home. So even though this guy is obviously an asshole, as I've said too, that I'm not a Doctor Strange aficionado. I wish I was, and anytime I can find like some old school Strange Tales, or I find a good Doctor Strange event like this, or Damnation, I'll read it, and I enjoy what I see. It depends on who's writing the guy, because Doctor Strange can be either really awesome, or it can be just a wet fart, in my opinion. So that's why I really test the waters on who's writing the book. And this, what's his name again? Jed MacKay. This guy. Now, we'll get into this in a minute, but I want y'all to just think that he could have just sort of gone back a few years. No, the way that he's sort of kind of painting these characters, showing their personas, especially the older ones like Amadeus here, and then being able to use the Silver Age Doctor Strange, and I believe Cleo was around at that time too, and of course Wong. You can see that he really went back in the archives to read about these characters. So before we go any further in terms of story, spoilers are going to abound. So if you've not read it, this has been your warning. Pause this review, go read the books, and then come back. And you're back. Carl says that, why would I lie to you? Here, your baubles. I found them shortly before you arrived, hidden here in my home. So Strange says, to kind of paraphrase this whole scene, is he's saying, if you were the one who had killed me, you'd be crowing about it to your last dying breath. And so he realizes that he has hit sort of a brick wall in his investigations. So they go back to the Sanctum Sanctorum, and Cap, which I'm assuming this is probably one of the Avengers books, etc., so forth, no one gives a crap. But Cap says, as you can see, things have been escalating. And they show what happened to Dagoth in terms of the Peregrine Child. Those of you that remember from the last issue, just the way that he's shrouded in silhouette. It was a very harrowing and scary panel. But to just see it like this, now if this scene is like in one of the Avengers books, which if you guys are reading the tie-ins, let me know. I'll go read that. That sounds awesome. Because just seeing it as more of a, like on a screen, it still gives us this creepy impact in seeing how this dude was just eaten alive. Now remember, Dagoth, Amadeus, all of these warlords, these Sorcerer Supreme warlords from different dimensions have taken up residence on Earth because of the, I think they're just called the War Sisters or something like that. And now they're seeing that all these, they're basically going to be fodder for the Peregrine Child. So just kind of keep that in mind. As you can see, Strange is just fed up. He doesn't know what to do, because at this point he just, at least this Phantom version, he says, I don't recognize this world. This life was led for years in my subjective future. I don't recognize the people in it. I am but a puzzle piece fitting poorly into the hole that Stephen Strange's death left in the world. Now, I will say that this panel right here is kind of lame, but let's continue the dialogue and then I'll explain. He goes, how did I think this would work? Who did I think I was? So the dialogue is on point. Strange is kind of having that all is lost moment because he's saying, I'm just another puzzle piece. I don't know everything that this recently deceased Stephen Strange, who has lived a lifetime. I don't know anything about this, so he's lost. But see how he kind of stands up and his arms are kind of like half-assed sort of out? This goes back, and if y'all want to see what I'm talking about, there's a book, I think it came out, it was either the late 80s or the mid-90s. I used to have it, but it fell apart because I read it so much. It's called How to Draw the Marvel Way. And when you flip through it, it kind of shows you body anatomy and how to draw correctly. But it also shows you how to make panels dynamic. And I think it was Comic Book Men that I was watching where Stan Lee was always talking about how when he would go to his artist's house, because John Romita Jr. was on that program as well, and he would talk about how Stan Lee would come to his father's house, John Romita Sr.'s house, and he said Stan would be jumping from the furniture, giving Romita Sr. these dynamic ideas in terms of posing. And when going back to How to Draw the Marvel Way, they would say, okay, you can show somebody walking through a door, or there was a scene that reminded me of this, as they showed an overhead panel of like J. Jonah Jameson getting ready to pound a table, And they said, that's not very dynamic. So they said what you can do is they drew another panel and they took what you could call the camera and did more of a Dutch angle, low angle shot. So you see more of his face and like his hand up in the air going to slam down on the desk. And he said, this is more dynamic. So here, this goes back to talk about that J. Jonah Jameson panel. This is not very dynamic. If they maybe would have gotten, like, as I said, a low angle Dutch shot on here, you know, a little bit closer on his face, or something like that, or even like, you know, if they want to do overhead, zoom in more and show maybe that much. Get, you know, the intensity of the eyes, maybe some spittle coming out of his mouth, some more action lines to just enhance that frustration, the loss that he's feeling, so that we're in that moment with him. Being this pulled back, I don't feel that much of an impact. Now, I feel McKay's words, but the art here, just this panel in particularly, just does not convey that emotion to me. So anyway, we're going to get off the soapbox and continue. There is a sweet moment with him and Clea. I don't want to give that away. And then him and Bats actually kind of connect for a moment. And I do hate that Bats says, you want to go for walkies? Because then we're back to the cutie stuff. Oh, don't care. But I like Bats as a character, especially in Damnation. He was really interesting. And what's significant about the walkies is it clears Steven's head. Like whenever you're frustrated or, you know, whatever it may be, sometimes just going for a walk helps reset your mind, especially having a friend or someone close to you, just to kind of use them as a sounding board sometimes. And then, you know, even if a friend may not be in it with you, they may be able to offer something from a non-biased, subjective point of view. And that's kind of what happens here with Bats. And why that's significant is because he has what's her name? I think it's Wong. It's either Wong or Cleus gather all the remaining warlords. And he says, I wanted to bring you all together because this is how it's usually done in a murder mystery. And I'm ready to reveal what's happening. And the paneling's interesting. Again, some of the moments like back here, I hate these far away panels. I've always hated them in any comic book I've ever read because they just lose the detail and the intensity. But you can kind of see the Sanctorium logo here. I don't really know the significance of it. Feel free to let me know down in the comments. And it kind of wraps up what we've read thus far about the War Sisters, all the warlords coming to Earth. And he's basically saying you came here because no other dimension had like the Avengers, the Fantastic Four, the X-Men. You all came here to cower behind heroes because you don't want to end up like how Dagoth was. And as he gets closer and closer to the truth, he then talks about how Amadeus was used as a pawn. And he says, so there's a third person involved in this. So who despises me enough and my enemy enough to want to murder me and frame this other person? And that's where things kind of start to get hairy and interesting. That's where I'm going to end on this book. I don't want to spoil any more of it. Just needless to say, Doctor Strange #4, continuing to fire on all cylinders. Like as I said, sometimes event books, by the time it gets to the end of it, you're just like, oh God, can we get on with it? But so far, this book has been solid. I would really be interested to read more from Jed MacKay. He really seems to enjoy Doctor Strange, and he seems to like comics in general. So I hope to see more from him, and in the meantime, I'm going to continue enjoying the death of Doctor Strange. If you guys have enjoyed what you've seen, please first and foremost support your local comic shop and see if you can pick up a copy if you've enjoyed this review. We really would appreciate it if you take a moment to hit like, share, and subscribe. Helps the club channel more than you could possibly know. And if you won't mind hitting that fancy little Amagatu bell next to subscribe, that way as we continue to upload content, you guys will get notified. Come to the channel, and we love talking with you all and hearing your thoughts and feedback down in the comments below or our social media pages, which I'll make sure to leave the links down in the description. So with all that said, thank you so much for stopping by. Hope you all continue to have an absolutely amazing day reading, and happy hunting, true believers.